As I work on guitars, it's nice to have this view out into the world. For years I stared into a wall while working on guitars, and it makes a big difference having a view, being able to see the weather, the sunshine, the rain outside of a window. And I stand right here as I work on guitars, so natural light is also really nice as well, although I do have lights in here. Which brings me to my topic today, workspace. I see people on YouTube with guitar channels that have all manner of workspaces. Some people spread a blanket on their beds and set up guitars. Some people put a mat or a blanket or a pillow on the kitchen table, set up guitars. That all works, and there's no judgment from me there. I've set guitars up on a kitchen table before. However, it's nice to have a designated space. So what do you need? What do you need for guitar work? Well, as I pan down here, you can see my table, and there's at least room enough for a cello across that expanse there. So that's a 4.5 foot table all the way along. Right now I've got stuff at the back of the table, so it's set up basically for acoustic and electric guitars, but I can clear it and probably work on a cello, maybe even a double bass on that space. And I think it's good to have a designated space, even though it's fine to do setups on your bed or table or floor even. It's nice to have a designated space to work. So if you can set up a table like this, and I bought this table here, it was one of those ones you buy and put together, and I think it was somewhere around £40. You can get them from IKEA or Amazon, pretty much anywhere. And it has two spaces, and you can see down low I have all my clamps and various things: cam clamps, spool clamps, C-clamps, strap clamps, my postage scale down there, which I pull out when I'm using. And of course I've got a little bit of space over here as well for things like strings, tools, knives, scalpels, you name it, varnishes, whatever, sandpaper box. Further down I've got parts, guitar parts, cello parts, pegs, stuff like that. And then up top I have guitars I'm working on, and of course my shipping boxes, which are all around here. Shaky cam time, sorry. And then over in the corner, and this is a very small shed, I've got my tool set and a little computer set up here. So I can do all my eBay stuff in here. If the weather allows, I've got laptops and stuff, I can go inside. But principally you want something that's at least 4 foot in length and 2.5 feet wide, with a nice mat for repair work, and then a couple of these things. I have a couple of different types. I have a cork one, which works really well, and then a swivel one for different heights. And if you flip it, you've got you can put this, you can combine these two for a more rigid, sturdy neck work type thing. Here is my little toolboxes for the stuff I use all the time for setup. So this is the most common stuff, anywhere from fret tools to files, nut files, of course a collection of adjusters here for truss rods, my mirrors. This is for removing pegs from the bridge pins rather, and then various cloths, my calipers, stuff like that. It's good to have them close at hand because those are the things you use all the time. I have a string winder here that I brought from the States that's battery operated. I'm looking for something similar that plugs into a UK plug. If anyone's got any I don't know what that's doing on there. If anyone's got any suggestions. But anyway, to have a designated space like this, if it's just a corner of your shed or garage or a utility room in your house, it really helps to have a designated space for working on guitars, rather than having to clear away or set up a bed or a table. It's just, I don't know, I think it's philosophically, psychologically is probably a better word, better to have a space set up for your guitar work. So this was mine. It's a, I'd say a 12 by 8 shed. It's really small, but I can spin and I can stretch all the way. There's my garden with my dog outside. The only downside to this particular space is temperature. So this is an outbuilding, so therefore it's really cold, and it's hard to work out here when it's really cold. I'm thinking about getting one of those small space heaters or radiators for out here, but it's really not airtight, so I might just be wasting money trying to heat this little room. So I tend to come out here when it's not too cold. But I'm kind of used to this situation. For years, when I first started this video, this YouTube channel, I was working in my garage in Colorado, where it was cold in the winters and spring even, snowy for a lot of the year, and really, really hot in the summers, intense dry heat. I worked in a utility room on a back porch, which was really small, about a third of the size of this shed, for the last year before I moved to the UK. And I only had enough room for basically a table like this and standing room to work. I didn't have really any shelf space, but I made do. I did a lot of work in that place. It was better than having to use a kitchen table or kitchen floor or something like that. So yeah, bringing you back to me. So yeah, this is my little workspace. I would advocate getting one of these prefab tables of at least this size. I would say 4 by 2.5, 5 foot long is even better if you want to work on bigger instruments, or if you want to have more tools readily available at hand. A shed works great. I love having the window. It really sort of enhances the work, because I'm a daydreamer, so I like staring out the window. Often there's kids on the backfield playing football, world football, not American football, although it's getting more popular over here. And it's nice to sort of be able to get away and rest your eyes from what you're doing, this infinitesimal work. But having a little bit of shelf space also really helps. Having your tools at hand, having everything within swivel reach, particularly if you're doing a gluing and clamping job, it's nice to have your tools within reach in case you need a different kind of clamp or brace or anything like that. A leather pad for bracing two pieces together. All kinds of stuff I have readily at hand, sandpaper, what have you. I have my bar clamps here in the corner for big work, and I can pretty much reach everything just standing here working at the bench. I do tend to stand. I've never really sat and worked. I don't know why. I know I worked in a workshop for a few years, in a violin shop, where everyone sat and I stood. I don't know what that is. I feel more comfortable standing and working, and I tend to work in spurts. So I come in here and I do an hour, and I stand and I do a couple, 3 setups. Then I go away and do something else, and I come back out and do another. I don't tend to work 4 6-hour shifts standing around this bench. It works better for me if I do it in quick bursts. So come out, do a couple of setups, go away, do something else, come back, do a couple of setups. If it's larger work, you don't tend to work that long anyway, because you have gluing and clamping time for most jobs. So you'll work, say, 45 minutes, and then you'll have to let something sit in clamps for 4 hours, even overnight. So it tends to be, you have to get used to short burst work. in this, unless you're doing full-time shop work somewhere and you have 3 benches and 3 instruments set up and you move from one to the other. Professionals are different, but for those of you who are hobbyists or eBayists or guitar techs that set up, buy and sell that kind of stuff, you're not doing high volume, you're not doing intensive restorations, you tend to work in blocks of 30 minutes to an hour at a time. You don't tend to work really long hours at this sort of stuff because there's a lot of downtime where you've got to let something sit, rest, dry, particularly for glues and varnishes and things like that. So standing works for me. I seem to work better if I'm standing rather than sitting. Also, it's important to have your workbench at the height that's comfortable for you. Now, I'm tall, so this workbench comes up to my waist. Any lower than that, and I would be stooping a lot. I've actually even thought about putting risers underneath the legs and going another 4 inches on this workbench to bring it up a bit higher. You don't want to be working at a table that's too high or too low. And you want good light source. It's really important. I have this window right over the work area, and a lot of times I can do work without turning any lights on, and natural light's better for you anyway. So that's really nice. I haven't had that in previous spaces. But there are times where you need you need a closer light source so that you can see detail. One thing about people who work on instruments is you're doing small infinitesimal work, and a lot of times you'll need your glasses, you'll need magnifying glasses, you'll need jeweler's glasses to do the work, because you want to be able to see what you're doing, and you want your setup to enable you to see what you're doing. I've seen a lot of people that have very poor setups and it affects their work. It's an ergonomic thing, and it's important to be able to do that. So I thought I'd do a video just on space setup. A lot of you do this. A lot of you do it enough to where you've assigned a space in your garage or some outbuilding, or maybe your basement or attic, because you do enough of it to where you want a permanent spot to do this kind of work. You want it set up with your tools and varnishes and that sort of stuff, so you can plonk a guitar down and start working. Those of you who do work with temporary spaces, there's nothing wrong with that, and sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're living in a small apartment and you share it with 2 or 3 people, often you can't have a designated space for this kind of work, so you have to get sort of used to setting up temporary workspaces. So there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what your limitations are, then you have to work within them. But importantly, you want to have enough size. I see people on YouTube working on benches that are far too small, and the guitars are sort of hanging over the edges of them, or it's a bedroom dresser or something like that. You really need a decent tabletop to work on these comfortably. A good light source, room around the table to get to different parts of the guitar. That's also important. You need to be able to take a couple of steps either way, because when you're working on a nut, or you're working on the tuners, or you're working on gluing the bottom end of a guitar, sometimes you work at different parts of the bench. So having access is really, really good. Now I don't have access on the north and south side of this table. There's a set of shelves on one end and my computer set up on the other, but I can move all the way along it longitudinally to work on different parts of the guitar. You may think that this is silly because you can move the guitar around, but it depends what size you're working off. I'm working on a big dreadnought in here. I can't move it around this table. It has to stay in one place while I move around it. If I'm working on a parlor or a ukulele, yeah, I can move the guitar around and situate it to where I can work on the part that I need to work on. But for larger instruments, definitely cellos, or any big bowed string instruments, you want a good sized table, you want a good height, you want good light, all those sorts of things. And you want to be able to have all the tools around you that you need in emergencies. because they come up. You got the wrong kind of clamps for a gluing job. You need to be able to grab the right kind before the glue dries. Of course, you should be dry clamping anyway, but things happen during repair work, and you know, you need access to your tools. Often I'm working with a tool and it's the wrong one. I need to grab another one that's more suited, and it just helps if it's all within arm's length, within reach. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on setting up a space. Tell me what your space is like. Send me a picture in the comments. Tell me if there's anything I've forgotten. I thought it was worth doing a video on, since I've recently set up this space and I've been working here for about 3 or 4 months now. I'm looking forward to the warmer weather. It's beautiful and green out there, but I can't wait till the trees fill in and there's more wildlife out there. But anyway, things are going well. I'm not quite up to the level of guitars that I had prior to leaving the US, but I'm building slowly. I should have some more coming in this week. I did take some time off this week to do some fun things. I went to my first rugby union match, a local rivalry here between Bath and Bristol. It was different, fun. You know, I grew up in the north of England many years ago, and I've been to a rugby league match, but rugby union, I think, is the more preferred brand of that sport. So that was fun. Did a couple of trips to local places, you know, so that I'm not just working all the time. But anyway, folks, hope you're well, and I'll talk to you on the next one.